Welcome to the Into Novus Knowledge Agronomy Podcast, your go-to resource for agronomic insights, technology solutions, and ongoing education. At Into, we combine agronomic expertise from soil analysis to best practice application methodologies to provide a holistic view for your yield optimization. Our focus is on practical strategies that improve efficiency and drive better results in the field. Join us for interesting discussions, expert advice, and the latest advancements shaping modern agriculture. Whether you're in the field, on the road, or at your facility, we're here to keep you informed and ahead of the curve. Welcome to the Into podcast. Thanks for joining us, guys. Today, we're going to give a little bit of an update on some of the progress or where the crop is across the geography. And then we're going to go into a little bit more discussion on corn diseases, corn fungicide discussion. So I guess we'll start with you, Rodney, if you want to kind of give us an update where things are in Illinois there.
Yeah, right now we're just on the edge of a thunderstorm, but we'll take the rain as long as you won't blow the crop down. We've got corn anywhere from the V8 to the V12 stage. We'll be pushing tassels next week and some early planted stuff. Beans are starting to bloom, which is a good thing with Saturday being summer solstice. So it's good to see the beans starting to bloom. The crop in general is also starting to grow great. We finally getting some heat, getting these ground temps up, so crop getting into the sulfur, especially soybeans, getting some good green color to them. And so knock on wood, very good crop right now.
Thanks, Rodney. How about you, Derek?
Yeah, so similar to Rodney, but as far as beans go, we got everything from just 5th to 7th trifoliate beans, but then a lot of beans now, especially if they're planted before April 15th, have started to hit that R1 growth stage. So we got a flower on the plants and we're hitting reproductive timing. Big thing on beans right now, just reminder for everyone that we don't stage beans based on size. So we've had slower growing conditions earlier on up until about 10 days ago. And so a lot of beans aren't canopied yet and they look smaller, but we are hitting those reproductive stages, which means a lot of things in terms of what we can apply and what that crop's doing. So be mindful as you go out with your post applications that even though the beans might not look like they've progressed a long ways yet, but we are hitting reproductive timing, which means we need to get our post passes on. And that's been my key message in beans right now. Get them clean before we get any further into the reproductive stages type thing. As far as corn goes, this week I've been in anywhere from V6 to V14 corn. So we're kind of all across the board. Now I'd say the majority is probably hitting that V10 to V14. And so, in terms of what that means, we got rapid uptake of nutrients, things like that. It's a pretty critical time as far as corn goes in our area. So again, I hope we keep those clean if we can, but we're reaching that point where weeds would have had to been taken care of before now. And now we're focusing on the nutrition and stress relief in that crop. But overall, things are looking really good. Like Rodney said, we just got some heat starting about 10 days ago, and now we're accumulating GDU so fast that corn's taking off and the beans are going to do fine as well. So
Thanks, Derek. I guess for my geography, a little bit more, excuse me. And I guess for my geography, a little bit more variability, just like it's kind of been all season long for us. Kind of like you guys mentioned on the soybean side, the early planted beans, the April planted ones are starting to flower now, but the problem is we didn't have a lot of those. We've got beans that are in that flowery stage. We got beans that are V3, V4. We've got soybeans that are just coming out of the ground, and we honestly still got a few first crop beans still left to plant. Just it's been so wet, and we got some replanting to do. And then we're going to have some double crop here real soon. Corn is kind of similar. Most of the corn would be in that range you're talking about, Derek, V6 to V14. The April corn is V12, V13 in that stage. But then our May planted corn is more that V6, V7 range right now. And then we do have some corn smaller than that. So pretty wide variation, a lot of rain across the geography, wet for the last 14 days. And some of the poorly drained soils really kind of suffering based on that. But that kind of rolls me into a little bit just on that growth and development. We were all kind of, Derek, you hit on the stage, Rodney, you did as well where you're at. I guess just kind of a reminder, at that V12-ish stage, if that's where a lot of our April corn is at that stage, we're determining ear length. So management can have a large influence on that. Sometimes we all get kind of wrapped around the the ear circumference or the number of rows around, determine it be 6, but that can be impacted a little bit by management, but that's more by genetics and by environment. The ear length, to me, that's something that's more impacted by management. And so anything we can do to try to make that plant healthier, to try to hold on more ear length, that's going to give us more kernels down. That's going to give us more kernels on each row. And so we'll have more kernels total on that ear. So just keep that in mind. Tasseling not far off from that corn. I actually saw some March planted corn the other day where the kind of that flag leaf is sticking up, so the tassel's not far away on it. But we should see tassels on the April corn here within a couple weeks at least. With that said, I think that would be a good point for us to kind of roll into that corn fungicide discussion. So there's been a little bit of development on the tar spot realm of things, and I think that might be a good place maybe for you, Derek, to jump in there since you've got some tar spot confirmed within your geography.
Yeah. So, yesterday, Missouri got its first confirmed case of it in Nottoway County in Northwest Missouri, which, we shouldn't be surprised at this point that we do have tar spot. We know we have the inoculum, we got the host with the corn residue and the corn that we have planted now. And so I say that with caution because I don't think there's any reason to panic. Type thing now that we've dealt with it. I mean, we treat it just like any other disease. We monitor it, we stay proactive. And, you know, yesterday, during a fungicide meeting, we were talking, and with our other diseases like gray leaf spot, say, for example, it's been around forever. And can we predict that? No, but we still can manage it with using the proactive approach and using the correct fungicides, things like that. Tar spot is really no different. We should expect it to happen, but when it comes to fungicide, things like that, I guess my point I'm getting at is the corn still grows the same today as it did before tar spot ever came into the US here, I think 2015. Point being is, so when that corn is most sensitive to stress and when it's determining yield the most, that's never changed. And I do not think we should make all our fungicide decisions around based on tar spot alone. And I think doing that over the last couple of years has caused us to misapply fungicides or apply them at the wrong time because we're waiting around for things to come in. And so right now, my message for my guys, yes, we've found it here in Northwest Missouri, but I guarantee you there would be more counties than just Nottoway County if we're actually out looking for it right now. And so my best advice is to stay the course. It doesn't mean we need to go out and blow fungicide on right now because we haven't reached those critical timings around pollination where we normally want it. But what we can do right now, aside from fungicide, is tar spot's opportunistic. We can be applying nutrition, things like that, making sure we get our top dress on because regardless, we know hybrid plays a big role in tar spot, but also a healthy plant is going to defend itself better than one that is going through nutrient deficiencies and stress and things like that. So my message for Northwest Missouri right now, get the plant healthy, give it the nutrition it needs, monitor it closely, but stay the course on that tassel type fungicide application. And as of right now, that's my best rec that I got. So
Yeah, appreciate that, Derek. I think one thing important to remember is just the fact that it's not a surprise that we found tar spot. I mean, it's been about the same time of year in Missouri the last 3 years. Also not a surprise because we've had conditions very conducive for it. The temperature's more mild, you might say. We went kind of over this the last podcast, but we've also had a lot of excessive precipitation and excessive leaf moisture, which gets it going as well. So that's really not surprising at all. But I think it's just important to remember it's here now. So when we have, we're going to get it in the 90s again this weekend. That's going to get a little bit high for that disease and it may stall out, probably will. but just to remember that we have it, so when conducive conditions arise again later in the season, it's going to progress more quickly because it's already got a foothold started. But with that said, Rodney, I did want to kind of kick it to you. I know you bring up a few points in terms of protecting yield potential, in terms of insurance with fungicide. I know you got a lot more experience, so I just wanted you to share that.
Yeah, so to tag on to what you guys are saying, and Derek said, don't give up on the crop, or let emotions of commodity prices and such drive us to think, well, I can very healthy crop, so I don't need to do anything. Remember that we've got a lot invested in this crop. We've all done a great job of feeding the crop, and we want it to continue to the end. And so I look at it as not only the health benefit and the stress mitigation, but an insurance to what you've already invested in your crop. And so if you look at the investment of the fungicide pass in comparison to what we've already spent and have invested in per acre in a crop, it's a very small percentage to ensure that we're going to give that crop the best chance it can to put yield on at the end. And I'll use an analogy of livestock producers that are listening, whether you're hogs or cattle. And when we get feeder calves in, or we get litters of pigs, we vaccinate those animals, and it's not because they're sick. We vaccinate so they don't get sick, and they grow and they continue to mature and put pounds on for us at the end. And that's the way I look at the fungicide pass on the corn crop and the bean crop to a point, but to ensure that we've got good stress mitigation and to be there at the end. Remember, even though we do not see the tar on the leaves, that does not mean that that fungi is not in that plant or on the plant. So when we see it, it's too late. So we want to be proactive and get that on. And if nothing else, make sure we get that, whether no matter what you're using as fungicide, get that on at that tassel timing so that you get the best chance of ROI and the best chance to give that crop a shot in the arm. If nothing else, the stress mitigation, so when you get to fall, it's still standing there for you to harvest.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Rodney. I always think people forget about that. When we look at yield differences and data, the one yield difference that nobody can ever see is that one windstorm that comes in September that blows down a crop that didn't have a fungicide on it, and that's pretty big. That's real big. But that said, I also want to mention too, just everybody keep in mind, we're talking about tar spot, but there are other diseases in corn. Southern rust, which is just as detrimental as tar spot, and if that blows in from the south, it's kind of tracking up into Mississippi now, but it blows in from the south, and that can get us just as badly as tar spot. Northern corn leaf blight, another disease that can cost a lot of yield. It can move quickly. We kind of quit talking about it when tar spot came along, but it's still out there. And then gray leaf spot, which doesn't move quite as fast, but it is more of a perennial problem, at least for us here in Missouri. So other diseases to keep in mind, so we got to protect the plant against all of them, not just tar spot, but they're all out there. I guess with that said, Derek, you did kind of mention timing, and maybe I'll ask both you and Rodney. I mean, you guys both come from the chemistry side of things, but a lot of people talk about timing. What's the proper timing? Do I apply it at tassel? Do I apply it after tassel? Do I apply it at brown silk? When do I apply a fungicide on corn?
Well, I'll let Rodney. I'll go first, and Rodney follow up. But yeah, I'm a huge stickler on timing because I'm a believer, regardless of what you're using, apply at the wrong time, you're not going to get the biggest bang for your buck or return on that type deal. And like I said, stay the course. If it's a disease type play, then yes, we have to adjust to that disease if it would move in early, things like that. But in general speaking, that right around that tassel timing, the R1, that pollination, you can apply a certain amount of stress to corn, say at V5, at pollination at R3, the same level of stress, and it's by far and away going to have the most impact around that tassel timing. Point being is that is when corn is most susceptible to stressors. When I say stress, I don't just mean disease. I mean, heat and drought and nutrient stress, disease, things like that, right around that pollination tassel timing, 10 to 14 day window that you're going to have there, that's when it's going to by far and away be the most sensitive to stress. And so if your corn plant still looks healthy, then that's exactly why I want you to apply fungicide at that timing on that crop. Sitting around and waiting until R3 to R4, that elusive brown silk stage, that is typically far too late to get our biggest return for fungicide. But that tassel window, like I said, even before tar spot, so outside of disease, has always been the key timing and the biggest response, the biggest return from fungicides. And that still remains true today. And so unless something would happen to come in earlier, there's no reason to not, if you're going to do a fungicide pass, still plan on that tassel application as being your lead there. Rodney, I don't know if you want to add to that or not, but
Yeah, so and I will good points, and also remember, um, Derek mentioned brown silk. There is no crop stage as brown silk, and if you wait till, like Derek says, till brown silk, you've probably missed the opportunity to help that corn plant. The other thing to remember is whether we're dealing with any of the diseases that Nick mentioned, we can't fix dead tissue that's already dead. So if you see some lesions from any disease, or you see tar from the tar spot, and you've already applied, you're not going to cure that. You're going to prevent it from prevailing any worse. The other thing with tar spot, if you apply at tassel, you may still, and if it comes in late, you're still in the combine cab going to see some tar on the corn leaves, but it did not affect the yield because you have already protected it and the yield is already set at that point when it comes in late in the fall. The only thing I'll say too on some of your guys that may be high management and they want to look at, 2 passes of fungicide, there's 2 trains of thought there. If you have a hybrid that is susceptible and not as defensive, you may want to go a little ahead of tassel in that V12 time frame with a maybe more an economical product, and then hit it at the tassel in that R1, maybe R2 stage with your second pass. The other train of thought is hit your first one at the early VT and then wait 2 weeks, 21 days, and hit the second time on the backside for for your guys that are worried about the tar spot late. So if you've got 2 passes, it's also opportunity to get nutritionals in there that are helping that corn crop that's really going to be cranking at that time. So I hope we haven't overloaded you, but I guess you can sense that we truly believe don't give up on the fungicide and on the crop.
I think from your point there, Rodney, on the 2-pass thing, I think it's a really good one, and I tend to fall in line with what you're saying as far as guy in the high management situation. I kinda like that late vegetative and then come back at R2 blister stage, because at that late vegetative time frame, that corn plant is taking in a ton of nutrients. I can feed that corn plant at the same time, maybe do some stress mitigation to keep that ear length, and then I can hit it on the backside with my more premium fungicide to protect it all the way out. But good points. With that said, one last question, and that is on the premium versus generic. We tend to get a lot of that this time of year, especially on corn. I I'll let you guys talk to. I guess I'll give my 2 cents on it first. I tend to be a premium fungicide guy on corn. I think there is a lot of investment to be lost with corn when it comes to standability, et cetera, and just the length of residual time. So I tend to be a pretty firm believer that you use a premium product to give you the most protection against tar spot, against southern rust, against all these diseases, and to protect that stock quality. I just think that's a hard thing to gain with a, let's say, a generic Quilt XL, et cetera, just to get that length of residual, to get that kind of protection. But I think it's a big investment to lose within corn. But what say you, Rodney and Derek?
well, I'll let Rodney, he can wrap us up here because he's had a lot of experience with it too. So I'll give my opinion on that one. And I think Nick's spot on when it comes to something like a tar spot, things like that, I don't think you can afford to not use something top tier or premium type level. But I just hit on timing, and my thing is if timing's so important and we have so many acres to cover and the crop advances so quickly from one stage to the other, it's unrealistic. When I say tassel timing, I completely am aware that there's going to be a lot of fungicide that all can't go on at tassel at the same time. But that's where that premium, longer residual, things like that, it buys you flexibility in that timing. Timing isn't quite as important. It's important with all of them, but you get away with a lot more going that premium side. You go some generic that doesn't have quite the residual, quite the effectiveness, and now timing, we're talking days rather than weeks. That you have to get that applied to get any sort of returns on type deal. The other side of that too, and even in non-disease scenarios, I think that I think there's some additional benefits that come with a premium fungicide in terms of that plant health that we talk about. Fungicides are not all created equal, and I think that's something to remember. A fungicide is not a fungicide is not a fungicide. Is they all have their purpose and they all have their strengths and weaknesses. And to an extent, I'm a big believer you do get what you pay for when it comes to fungicide. And so that's something to keep in mind. But in certain non-disease scenarios where a nutrient might be our, soybeans, where disease isn't primarily the main driver for our fungicide, sure, generics have their fit and you can be really successful there. But as far as timing goes, keep that in mind. You're buying flexibility whenever you go premium as well, type thing. But Rodney, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah. So the other thing to remember on some of your name brand, or I don't want to call name brand, but your premium products, there's a lot of research and data for stress mitigation and other things coming with those products, not only just yield. So, you know, they all work, but you got to remember the big name brand stuff has done a lot of research and a lot of coming to you with a lot more in that package than what a generic brings. And so I'm not, I will never, what was I say, talk down to any of them. It's just some are better than others. And it's sometimes also the adage, you get what you pay for. There's a lot of truth to that. So, be cognizant of the grower or the operation that you're working with and what their expectations are. So, I just want to make sure that you get something on there. But if you're around these areas that are tar spot has been confirmed and probably gray coming and all that, I would go with your premium product on your first pass. From there, the generics are a good follow-in.
Good points, guys. And yeah, should reiterate the point that, I mean, yes, putting a fungicide on regardless is a good thing in a disease year. And there's going to be some people out there that probably say, well, I've been using generic Quiltec Excel for years and I've been getting a yield response. I do think it is, depending on your level of disease, but getting a higher level of diseases, the premium products are going to separate themselves out. But with that said, guys, you got any other final thoughts?
No, I would just say, on diseases, and we didn't hit beans, and that'll probably be, we'll roll into our next one. Um, but if you see the lesions, it's too late. So we've got to be proactive and get it on there at that tassel timing. To Derek's point, we know you can't get every acre at tassel. That's why I'd rather see you turn them into your whoever's going to apply them for you a little early, knowing that you've got some lag time if the plane or drone or helic, whatever you're using, doesn't get there. You're still in the window of opportunity.
I guess summary for my territory would be get the beans clean now. Layer that residual. You still have an opportunity to do that. Get those clean, and then understand that corn, like I think Nick said, and I alluded to, I got corn that'll have tassels poking out of it here in the next 10 to 14 days. Understand it's coming up quick. What Rodney just said, have a plan we talk about tar spot or anything else, number one is just have a plan for it. And so get that order in, put in quick, and understand where we're at with both crops. But that's all I got.
The other thing I'll say, we are not sounding the alarm bell on tar spot. I don't want anybody listening to think that we're
No,
so we're being
not at all.
we're being proactive to have a healthy crop, not just, oh my gosh, tar spot has been cited. So we're just after a healthy crop.
Good points, Rodney. I will say there was an article from K-State when they found it here last week, and I thought there was a really good point in there that they made, just saying that generally the earlier we find it in those years tends to be generally higher yield loss from tar spots. So it is something to be mindful of just based on historical data. With that said, Rodney, you made a great point about soybean fungicides. I think that's a great transition. That's what we'll cover next time. But for this time, appreciate you guys listening. Hopefully you're able to take something away about corn fungicides, about timings, the importance of it, different products. So appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us. This podcast is brought to you by Into Novus Knowledge. Please reach out to your Into agronomist if we can help in any way. Join us next time for more in-depth agronomic advice.